A little bit of chaos this week as FC Cincinnati pick up 3 huge points on the road versus Atlanta, and then, in a rare moment, look strangely off at home. For the first time, FC Cincinnati lose and drop 3 points at home as well. I mean, it would have been a pretty amazing feat not to lose a single match in TQL Stadium, but all things considered, 3 points in 1 week did not do much damage to FC Cincinnati's position in the table. Little damage, just not very much. We are going to get into those magic numbers and what kind of pace FC Cincinnati needs to keep up later in the show. But real quick, let's just talk about something else. Records are important, shields are cool, but we Cincinnati fans know that some of these things can just come down to momentum. And I, like everyone else, want to see FC Cincinnati clinch that supporter shield at the end of the season. But I also hope we do so with like a clear momentum heading into MLS Cup. We're still far enough out to, I think the team's got a little bit of room to work out some kinks if they have to. But if FC Cincinnati can go on a run like they did in the first half of the season, Messi, Philadelphia, I don't think Orlando, I don't think anyone can stop them when they're playing their best. So just got to look forward to that and hope FCC can get rolling again. You are listening to episode 344 of Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We hope you enjoyed your Labor Day weekend. I just got back from a family trip, but I still wanted to hop on here with these lovely co-hosts of mine and talk a little soccer. So we hope you enjoy this show, and let's go ahead and get that squad in here. First up, we'll bring in Josh. How was your weekend?
My weekend was nice. I didn't have the extended weekend. I volunteered to work today. Things keep moving in the world that I make my living in. So
Crazy.
I volunteered, but it was good. It was calm. It was nice. It was hot, which I was not a fan of. I thought we were done with that, but like the MLS Cup standings, things are getting hot.
You know, as I drove back all the way from North Carolina this morning, I was thankful for people like you that work on Labor Day because it allowed me to eat and get gas and all that jazz. So appreciate everybody out there that does work the holiday. We'll switch it now to Jeff Tebbets. How about you? How was your weekend?
Oh boy, it couldn't have come sooner enough. I think I feel like I had been in front of a microphone all week last week.
Yeah,
Doing both jersey swap, helping coach out with the walkthrough, talking with the guys in the mainland. I needed a break from the computer, and the weekend was exactly what we needed. Just laid by the pool all day today. Yeah, enjoyed the game on Saturday as much as we could. I did discover the wild side in my wife because she wanted to rip appendages off of Janssen's fingers after that game. So it was overall, I think, a beneficial weekend aside from the loss.
well, yeah. I think I saw you say something about that, and it cracked me up just visualizing her just running out of the pitch and getting you banned for life.
You don't want to mess with my wife. You do not want to mess with my wife.
That's awesome. Well, good to hear it, man. Let's get into Justin. I'll give you the same question.
My weekend was good. It was a sports crazy weekend. Obviously, college football is back. U.S. Open. Reds playing the Cubs. It was crazy. And now we're starting to hit that lull where now we're just looking ahead and you're like, oh, man, we're actually going to get a little bit of a break from some games.
Right? I totally forgot it. We started talking about schedule congestion and all that. So when you talk about, oh no, these games are coming fast and furious, and they did, because you had to go to Atlanta, and then you had to immediately come back and play Orlando, and so it was boom, boom, boom. But somehow the international break just slipped my mind, completely gone, and so now I'm staring at the schedule like, hey, what's going on here?
Yeah, I just assumed that we were playing Wednesday, Saturday for the rest of time. Like this is how this works. We just play every other day, and then eventually everyone just collapses.
Yeah, you guys remember when Major League Soccer ended in the fall, and now it's like December?
It's still the fall. It still counts until December 21st or something like that.
Oh, come on. There's no way. No one in their right mind thinks December is fall.
I mean, Starbucks considers fall to be in the middle of July, but
it's Christmas season. What are you guys talking about right now? It's happening.
I'm already seeing peppermint before I'm seeing pumpkin latte.
Oh, goodness.
February to fall. That is pretty incredible.
Well, thanks to everybody who's tuning in live and listening in the car tomorrow on the podcast. We appreciate you jumping in here. We're going to get into our best and worst, as is tradition. Before we do so, I want to give a shout out to Apollo Home. They have the back to school special still going for you, offering $38 HVAC cooling tune-up special. Go ahead and get your AC checked out before the end of summer. And then, so we're talking about fall right here. Since fall is coming its way, you might as well get the heating system checked before winter shows up. You can give them a call at apollohome.com or, I don't know, open a phone book if you still have one of those and find them and call them. So they still exist, guys. When's the last time you saw a phone book?
I've stayed in some sketchy hotels, so I think probably that would be the last time. Staying like in a Motel 8 or something like that.
I think I saw a phone book on Saturday when I had to rip one in half after watching that game. I guess I have half a phone book now.
That is the only time I see phone books is when someone's ripping them. So somewhere in like weightlifting gyms, there must just be stacks of phone books left over from the 90s because that is still a thing, right? All right, best and worst, Josh. We will throw it to you.
Yes, so I'm going to try to make light of a dark situation with my best. My best is going to be Lucho Acosta. Lucho Acosta is finally going to get a break. Obviously, we know his importance to this team. He's the MVP frontrunner, despite what some might believe. But the unfortunate yellow card situation means he's going to miss the game against Philadelphia in 2 weeks. But I'm going to, again, try to look at this as a positive of he is so critical to this team and the way that they operate. And that point has been beaten into this, the psyche of this entire fan base, that, it will actually be great to get him some fresher legs down the stretch run when you're really, really going to need desperate points against, on the road, going to Montreal, going to Toronto, facing Charlotte, those must win. You gotta have 3 points games. And obviously you don't, who knows what's going to happen in Philly? Obviously, you don't like your chances without the leading, the best player in MLS.
I was going to ask you, is your worst also Lucho finally gets a break?
As much as I would love to, I like the idea more of a healthy Lucho down the stretch than I do about, trying to scrap out a point on the road against Philadelphia. So my worst is, unfortunately, this team has now proven once again that they still need to figure out how to break a bunker. If you watch that game, I'm gonna not get too far ahead here, but that game against Orlando felt like the blueprint of how you beat this team in the playoffs. It had playoff vibes to it. They obviously the fan base brought the atmosphere at home, but once Orlando got that lead, they shut it all down and made things ugly. And as we saw in the Leagues Cup against Nashville, they run out of ideas of how to break down that bus real quick. So that's going to be something that Pat Noonan and company going to need to figure out, because this is not going to be the last time, especially come playoff time, where you're going to, concede and have to figure out a way to get past 8-9 in the box.
Yeah, you're right. Things do seem to be slowing down when it gets confined back there. We can dive into that a little bit later if you want to. Let's throw it over to Justin. Best and worst.
My best is probably going to be finally getting the win in Atlanta. It's a monkey that we needed to get off our back. The dreaded turf wars, right? Like that's another thing, and being able to finally say we've done it and no more having to have this conversation every single time we go into a turf field or play in Atlanta. My worst would probably be echoing off of Josh, just lacking that ability to finish. I'm not so worried too much about our ability to crack the bunker so much, but the ability to finish the opportunities you're given and being able to show some of those line breaking runs, actually, you're lethal with that. Because right now we're not. We're just going to we're fumbling the touch and then bouncing outside of the box and shuffling it back. So I think we really need to improve and make those opportunities that we get against teams like that pay off.
All right, we got all kinds of ones flowing in here from the chat. We'll throw up Jose here saying the best coming back from behind against Atlanta. Echoing you there, Justin. Worst, Orlando having all the injuries in quotation marks, which look more like flops, and the ref swallowed all of them. J8 saying the best coming back versus Atlanta as well. Worst, Boston wore Apple TV gear last week on the show instead of FCC gear, and we lost. I wish I would have seen this before today's show, Jay, because I'm just wearing some like sailboats. Like there's nothing going on here.
I mean, you're not going to be able to jinx us in a weekend that we don't have a game. So, where
call.
would you like? Go with it.
I'll get another shot right next Monday. Eric Schmidt, best huge comeback win at Atlanta. Yeah, showed a huge, I think, not just the comeback win, but showing the ability to do so. We're going to need that, especially in a playoff run. Worst, ridiculous yellow on Acosta. It's like, if I was on 4 yellows, I would go up to the referee before the match and be like, hey, just 4 yellows. Just not saying you can't.
MVP, just
not saying you can't yellow card me, but let's make sure I deserve it if we do it.
The thing is, though, if you're Acosta, you should be going into this game knowing that that's what Orlando's going to try to do to you, trying to squeeze out a yellow card against you. That's exactly the style that they play against their opponents, that they want the yellow cards to flow freely.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Kevin Michael also talking about Orlando. He said their entire team deserved a Razzie Award for all of their acting. I was hoping Coach would be on the show tonight because Coach, he's a little bit impartial when it comes. In fact, he's almost so impartial you want to strangle him when you're watching the match because, obviously a lot of us get into full orange and blue mode and we just want to hear about how awesome our guys are or how unfair the refs are or whatever. Coach is the guy during the game. If you ever follow his tweets on Twitter, he brings a lot of like real world rationality to it. He's a very logical person. So he said, this is exactly how Orlando should be playing FC Cincinnati, frustrating, getting under their skin, yada, yada, yada. And I was like, shut up, Coach.
I mean, I'll say the thing, if FCC had done that on a couple Wednesdays ago, they'd be playing in a final.
You're exactly right.
I mean, you got to know how to muck it up sometimes.
Well, all right, Joseph, you got in just in time, so we'll throw it up there. Best, we still have room to move and figure ourselves out. Exactly. Love that take. Worst, depth and finishing. We continue to pay money on the front end and seldom have the finishing percentage of the opportunities. Good point. I kind of have a little bit of that in the show later on, so I won't spoil it quite yet. Who are we missing here? Jeff.
Yeah, you're missing the guy that has the opinion. I think that's ready. I saw Ben talks Chelsea, and he's saying, I'm just praying we don't bottle the supporters' shield. And I totally understand that perspective. So before I go on to that opinion, I do want to focus on my worst. My worst is basically both goals last week looked almost exactly the same. The pressure came to the right of Celentano, and it got Ian Murphy looking at the ball and not his player. I mean, Atlanta, it was sort of a forgivable one because it was deflection, I think, off Hags. But still, Murphy was not there with his guy. He was looking at the ball. Same thing with Orlando. When the ball came up, it went to the right of Celentano. Murphy looked at him and left his guy wide open in the box. So both times, I hate targeting people, but both times Murphy was looking at the ball and not paying attention to his player. I could be wrong in the end, but that's what my eyes don't lie that often. That's what my eyes saw. The best, and maybe this is a question to you guys. What team in the MLS has won their last 2 matches without looking?
Sporting?
Ding, 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 ding. Sporting Sporting Kansas City has won their last 2. So my best is the fact that we've got good fortune with playoff teams not winning games when they need to win games. Columbus, yeah, they beat up on, was it Montreal, I think, on the road, but then before that they lost to Houston on the road. Orlando, yeah, they're hot, but they drew against Charlotte on the road. The Revs were hot, but they got cooled by Austin at home. There are a lot of teams that should be starting to win games and catch up to us, but they're not doing that. And that same thing goes for Inter Miami. They didn't have a 2-win week either. So teams that need to catch up and start winning games are not winning games. And I think that's good fortune for us. That's why I say I am confident we're not going to bottle the Supporter Shield. I'm not knocking on wood. I am confident.
I'm less worried about the Supporter Shield. I just want FCC to be flowing. I think I said that at the top of the show. So I'm with you, Jeff. I think it's really hard to bottle it. It's possible, of course, but it's hard to bottle it. My best and worst. FC Cincinnati, I think, was good enough. Well, yeah, let's throw it to my trip. If you have to do this, and I don't recommend missing any FC Cincinnati game, but if you have to miss a match, it is just really nice to be able to put your tickets up and boom, they go, because our club is so successful. It's just kind of nice. I mean, I don't miss very many games, but the time comes when you got to do something family oriented or whatever. And like in the case of me this weekend, and boom, they go, you sell them, you're happy, no sweat. There was a time being an FC Cincinnati supporter that wasn't always the case. So I'm just happy that it's easy. My worst is just missing that match, even though it was a loss. It's still their first loss of the year, so it's kind of stinks to not be around for the milestones, even the bad ones. All right, let's get into it, though. We'll do Atlanta first. I know it's a little bit further in your memory, but it's also the best one. So we'll bring you the spirits up on this show. FC Cincinnati win on the road versus Atlanta. Come from behind win after a goal is scored in the first half by Atlanta. Then midweek, of course, losing at home. I'm sorry, at the weekend, losing at home versus Orlando. But the biggest surprise of the trip, no Bupenza. Bupenza does not play on turf when he has a toe injury. Good move by Pat Noonan holding him out. Question mark, question mark. I'll throw it to the panel.
No, yeah. Why play him at this point? Like you just alluded to, like Supporter Shield is kind of a thing. You just really want the cohesion to start working up, and why would you mess with having an injured player, especially when you have Dom Baji, who still has yet to return to the club. So
see, I feel like that's an easy answer because we won, and you're like, oh, of course not. But you don't have any chemistry being built on a player that was just brought into this team.
Yeah, but you definitely don't if he goes out, like if he further aggravates that injury. And now you're looking at a 3 or 4 week kind of situation where he's not up to 100%. I would much rather have a full and healthy Bupenza at some point to be able to see what we have in that attacking 3.
Even worse, if you have Bupenza go down on turf, let's say the turf monster claims another victim, you're down to basically Brandon Vasquez and maybe Yuya Kubo playing a faux forward position. You don't have Dambaji healthy. You don't have Kimi Ordonez off the bench. Sergio Santos is available, but it feels like he's much better coming off of the bench than he is starting. And I think we're seeing in the past 2 games that he started, he really has not been as effective of a player. He tends to be someone I think comes on, extracts those yellow cards from the opponents that need to be taken out. He is a guy I want to see later on in the game.
Dom Baji's like your high school, your long distance girlfriend. It's been so long since you've seen them. I don't remember what the guy looks like. What were you gonna say, Josh?
I agree in the sense that you don't want to risk him because you need to find out really what you have in him when it matters. I will say, given what they've done in the past in terms of bringing guys back slowly, bringing guys back into the fold, getting a little cameo appearance, if you will, Given how that game was flowing, I was a little surprised he wasn't even available. Um, he didn't make the trip at all. And I know you want to save him from turf, but as we've mentioned, there's a chemistry problem still. There's still some details that need to be worked out between him and Acosta and Vasquez, and just how each of them are going to flow in that offense. And really, the only way you're going to get those minutes is by getting those minutes in a game. And so, you know, not so much not playing him, but not making Bupenza available, I thought was a questionable choice, because given how that game shook out, and obviously, hindsight's 2020, we come back and win the game and whatever, but I would be hard pressed to think that Pat Newton wouldn't have brought Bupenza on in the 70th minute had he been available, just to give you that firepower, because that's what you're paying Bupenza for. It's what you sacrificed the U22 spots for, is to bring in a guy who's going to give you firepower. And so,
yeah,
it worked out, but
he's taking a lot of flack this week just because he's not winning matches. You bring in a big dollar player like that, and then you drop a result versus Orlando, which also, just relax. I think we've been so good at home that it's just expected. FC Cincinnati must win at home or the world's ending. And the world isn't ending. And yeah, it sucks. And yes, we should expect a lot from this team. They're great, but is Bupenza supposed to be winning right now for him to be successful? Because I've seen that take. We spent the money for this year. He has to win this year or he's a bust.
I don't think so, but I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with that. I mean, it is a considerable amount of money for this club, but I don't see that. I mean, this team has that chemistry. It has built-in depth by attrition. It's not a player that you're going to have to throw the Lions gate of this attack, to be successful. Like, you still have Brandon Vasquez, you still have Lucho Acosta. You're able to get things out of Santos and some of our lineup choices, and you're able to get, consistent play from Baji. It may not be a goal scoring machine, but like Bupenza is just a player that you're bringing in to be able to finish. And right now he just doesn't have that timing with the players.
I'm trying to really admit to myself that we need to rest Bupenza, and we need him to be someone that's working slow into our group. I can see, though, the other side, that we really do need Bupenza, because Brandon Vasquez went a long distance in the Atlanta game, and he's played a lot of minutes this year. He looked tired against Orlando. I think that's why Noonan brought him out pretty early in that game. So to say that we've got, Vasquez, we've got Santos to back him up, we really don't have a healthy squad behind him. And I think I can see the argument of having Bupenza available at least for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, but I can also see the argument of, we don't want to risk this guy having an exacerbated turf toe to lose him for more than just this one game. If anything, I would have liked to see Bupenza start the Orlando game so that we can give him that confidence, and then bring in the likes of Santos, bring in anybody that can back him up if he needs it. But I can see a lot of different perspectives on this.
Sean Pace on YouTube saying, I think there's a ton of pressure for 2023 in silverware. The window of opportunity is not long and elite of such parity. Sean implying that Bupenza needs to perform this year, quite honestly. If you follow his line of thinking there, then FC Cincinnati has to snag the window that they've got in front of them.
And I can't blame people for believing in that, really. Like I understand the argument for Bupenza, being labeled as a bust right now, because he's not, because you took the calculated risk, given where you were at the table, to bring in another senior DP and sacrifice the ability to bring in U22 spots, because your expectation is to win silverware. And then things got real hard in a flash for reasons that a team got really good and all of a sudden, and things started to get a little hairy, and you drop form. So I understand the pressures there, and I can't fault people. My personal expectation for Bupenza is that we aren't going to see the best of Bupenza until hopefully playoffs, but likely next year, because that's just how I think these things tend to operate and work out. But hopefully I'm wrong, and he can find the form come playoff time. But I don't blame people for having a little bit of some hesitation so far.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see the argument of, and I'm looking at this with how we had Brenner earlier this season. He was out, gave us a goal, and that's it. He was gone. And for most of the successful first half of the season, we didn't have that third DP. We were depending a lot on Acosta's tactics, his goals. We were depending on Obi clogging up the middles and working really well with Junior Moreno. And we were depending on that cohesiveness. So I can see the argument of we don't necessarily need Bupenza to be 100% working on 100% to get to that success level that we experienced earlier this season.
Well, if you wanted to look at a designated player that struggled, outside of that opening shot for Atlanta, Amada, who at one point, just a couple weeks ago, everyone's talking about being the Major League Soccer most valuable player, versus FC Cincinnati. He had that beautiful shot in the second minute free kick that almost snuck past Celentano, but instead bounced off the post. And after that, I don't know, it just kind of went dark, and Acosta ended up being the best Argentinian on the field in Atlanta. So not every game do you get your star DP. I think that's a decent argument, because Atlanta was on a roll before that happened.
Yeah, it was a great showing by the midfield again, and obviously, Acosta doing what he did later in the game kind of made everyone forget about that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, to your point, like, you rely on the depth to pick up when your DPs aren't performing the way they should, and we're fortunate enough to have the Lucho Acosta picking up the slack for any kind of production that's been lessened, and then Obi cleaning things up in the middle. So we have the depth there. It's just the rest of it is needs to pick it up a little bit.
Let's real quick.
I will, if I can add one more thing about Bupenza. We need that work rate, though. That's what Brenner did exceptionally well. I know he was a terrific, get into the box, really cause some damage to the back line. But his work rate, being able to play back when Acosta and Vasquez just don't have the legs, and just continuing that motor, we need that from Bupenza. He needs to bring that. That's what I expect. If the goals aren't coming and the play is not there and the chemistry is just not there right now, I can live with that. I can't live with standing up there at the top of the box, just watching the other team in transition blow past him.
Let's just keep in mind that in an alternative universe, we still have Brenner, and he just went down for 4 months because of a thigh injury. Exactly. So, we lucked out, I think, in that sense of it. If Bupenza can give us, just a little bit more of the production that Brenner was able to give us without scoring goals, then we're back up, I think, and not really having this conversation.
Yeah. We got to burn through this match real quick, because we got stuck on a pretty awesome topic, which I'm totally all for. But Atlanta's first goal deflected off of Nick Hagland. You said it earlier, I think, Justin, that both goals were the same.
I said it.
Sorry, Justin.
Give me the credit, not Justin.
This one was weird, though, because it probably wouldn't have ended up if it didn't hit at Hagland and then bounce to the center of the box. But to your credit, I think I know where you're going with that. Is shouldn't someone have been there? That's my question. When I first saw the goal, I didn't even catch the Hagland deflection, and I was like, "Where is the guy?" Around the penalty spot. Like, how can you leave somebody that open?
I mean, we've had great games from Ian Murphy, no doubt. I mean, he's done well to, I think, advance the ball up, be there to communicate with Matt when it needs to be controlled. But when it goes over on a Hags' side, he tends to ball watch We saw that last year in Orlando when he was playing the left wing back position, and he found himself ball watching and got mounted overhead by his opponent for Orlando's goal. He tends to watch the ball a little bit, and I want him to be a bit more aware of the other presences in the box.
What do you guys think of? What do you think of Brett Halsey again in Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, he good moments and bad moments. I mean, obviously it's one you circle on, like you can't lose the man like that. You can't get turned like that. You can't let that ball get in. I mean, yes, you're gonna get beat, and you hope the defenders are there, but he's a young kid. He makes up for it, and as we talked about 1,000 times with his work rate. I mean, every time he comes on the pitch so far, he's brought a spark.
Mm-hmm.
So this being his first kind of all right, this is a rough patch for you. I'm okay with it. You're gonna live with that. You're gonna have to live with those growing pains because of a young kid. So
the fact that he's able to bring that spark on both sides of the field also gives me confidence. We've seen games where we've held our breath because we've have a right wing back on the left, and we're like, is Ray Gaddis going to be able to hold this while Barreal needs a little bit of rest? And see Halsey being able to bounce back and forth like that gives me confidence. It doesn't give me strength in emphasizing he's your starter next year, but he does look like a very confident backup.
Well, the cool thing about him, though, and I think Brian missed this last week when he crapped all over him, and he said, this is not an MLS caliber, blah blah blah. He just launched into his Halsey hate. But if FC Cincinnati is in a position where they need an attacking back on that side, you're not getting that out of Ray Gaddis, and Powell will sometimes give you the run down the field, but he very rarely gives you the spark into the middle. Halsey almost created his own chance versus Atlanta. He had a shot. I mean, it went over the goal, but when's the last time Ray Gaddis has created his own chance and took a shot? I think that's the spark. Yes, maybe it's not MLS caliber in Brian's words, but to me, if you're down a goal and Arias is exhausted or Barreal is wiped out, you still have a guy, and I think that's the coolest thing about it.
I don't think there's any doubt that Halsey has earned his spot on this team. I mean, you see how confident he is on the ball. You see how, energetic he is in defense. Maybe not as clean, but I think there's no doubt that Halsey has earned his spot. Now, Sergio Santos, I got that. Arias has secured the right back position. And so now we're just trying to figure out what we're going to do. We've seen Powell and Ray Gaddis be able to play both sides of the pitch, obviously leaning more to the right back. But I would like to see Halsey play that backup position as a right back more often.
Another thing that stood out in Atlanta was poor Kubo, man. 2 shots inside the box. I think both of them were in the box. If not, one was very, very close, but the one definitely was. And Guzan, to be fair, saved the one. The other one, I think, went. I don't believe Guzan got a hand on it, but it went a little bit.
There was one. Was that the Orlando game? Or no. I'm thinking Miami.
No, Atlanta. We're still talking about Atlanta. And Kubo. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to take to get Kubo to score these. It seemed like, do you know how good FC Cincinnati would be if Kubo could get a ball on frame and whack those in? I don't know what has happened.
I think maybe we have to tell him it's the 110th minute and not the 110th minute. I think that seems to be the way that it's working this year. But I'm giving Kubo credit, not just because he's a Japanese speaker and I can understand him in the locker room, but he gives you at least something off the bench. I think this year it's a little bit harder because last year he knew who his substitution was. He knew he was coming in for Junior Moreno, and he was there to play the midfield, to connect to the passes, to the edges. He knew what his role was. This year, he's playing a lot more roles, and I think that means he's not going to give you, I think, what you're looking for each time. if we can get our forwards back to 100% health, have Dombaji up there, have even Akimi Ordonez off the bench, then you're going to see Kubo coming back in and playing full Moreno, and giving you the quality substitution role that he showed us last year.
Yeah. Speaking of Moreno, the link up with Acosta. When's the last time you saw? That one blew my mind. Absolutely blew. I don't watch as much European football as you guys do. When's the last time you saw anything close to that?
Were they just headed into space?
Yeah.
You don't see it often. You see it a little bit more in La Liga, where they use their head to kind of link up passes, but no, that was brilliant, and it shows how much those two players play off each other. If you remember, Acosta was kind of a firecracker on this team, both emotionally and in his play, before Junior Moreno kind of softened and calmed down that locker room a little bit. And Junior Moreno, you could see how much they respect each other and play off of each other, just like we saw with the young Ariel Barrial. You're seeing Moreno and Acosta, with him being able to play higher up the pitch. I think that's just what you're going to get from those two. It was really nice, and I would like to see Junior play a little bit more significant role at the top of the box. If you remember, he was the one that kind of kept our momentum going. I mean, we had a lot of those defensive battles, and he was able to get a couple matches where he got the goal. He got the game-winning goal against Columbus. So get him some more touches at the top of the box. That's all I'm asking.
It was incredibly spectacular, and it was probably one of my most popular tweets. But I tweeted that, if certain somebody else had scored that goal, it would be a week's worth of breakdowns and highlight reels and everything else. You would have seen that goal in every language across the world, and I mean, it was spectacular. It truly is. I will go down as it was the best goal of the season, like in the league. Like the link up, the dunk, the dink off the head, and then to hit it first time, like, and it wasn't just like it slipped past. Like he placed it, and it was just sublime. And it's going to be one of those moments where I'm going to look back on the season, or look back at, whenever Lucho Acosta finally is done, and then that's going to resonate in my brain forever, just because I didn't know what happened. I didn't know how it happened.
Yeah.
I was starstruck.
I think they were really challenging Acosta in that game, especially down the stretch. They were daring him to cut through the middle with his right foot. And I think at some point, the team recognized that. They recognized that Atlanta was stacking up to Acosta's right too much. And because of that, he was able to turn the field just a little bit, get his left foot on it, and equalize the game at that point.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal play. I'm with you, Josh. I think that it's one of those highlight reels for FC Cincinnati. It's going to be in the announcement, next year, like in the whole intro.
You'll see it in the highlight, in the hype in stadium highlight warm up. Like, here we go. It's like, yeah.
You'll see it all over the place when they announce his contract renewal, his new contract.
Oh, yeah, please get on that. Every day that goes by and he scores another goal, I just see another $1 million on that contract. Oh, we gotta switch it from the happy to the sad, because FC Cincinnati then drops points at home versus Orlando. I think the big difference between Atlanta and Orlando, at least for me, was just how tired this team looked. I mean, what's your guys' takeaways to what happened versus Orlando?
I'll jump in first. I'm not sure what to make of it. Orlando is a bit of a tough nut to crack. We saw it earlier in the season when we were in relatively good form, I would say. I mean, played pretty well against Houston before the game. So they're just a tough Oscar is it Prea? Did I say that right? I always get his name confused. But he always does a masterful job preparing his team for the win. It's kind of they're not one of those teams that's just going to line up and play you at your best. They're going to play you at your worst. They're going to do what makes you uncomfortable. And for FC Cincinnati, yes, tired legs could have something to do with it, and I think Pat mentioned that heavily. But for me, it just looked like they were daring us to do things we couldn't do or haven't been able to find the ability to do all season long. So that's my 2 cents about that.
Yeah, I
I
mean,
think the game itself. Sorry about that, Josh.
go ahead. No, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
I think the game itself, it feels like, and I brought this up with the mainland, one of these teams did not want the ball, and whoever didn't want the ball more was going to win this game. Earlier in the season, I think the challenge was to go into Orlando and get that goal. Orlando just said, "We're going to give you all the possession. We know our style of game. We're going to make it so that you're awkward with the ball, and you have to penetrate through us." We're at this point in the season, we're fine with 0-0. And then coming back here and going into TQL Stadium, the challenge, I think, was if we were to present you the same exact type of defense where we're like, oh, you guys can have all the possession. You didn't beat us with it before, and they weren't able to change their game and beat them again. So it feels like Orlando didn't have to deviate from their style of play, whereas FCC, they were forced to play Orlando's game.
They almost did because Santos scored a goal right away. That got called back. I have to ask it just because there's always the few fans that say it's not offside. So, does anyone here believe it wasn't offside? It's just out of curiosity.
No.
Silence. Josh raises his hand. Do you
That
really?
was offside.
Off. Yeah, I thought so too. Unfortunately, Santos is really, really fast. So I still applaud him for taking the chance because if he times it right, it's going to be. But he's almost too fast for his own good, and that he beat that. He beat that pass.
That's what we want Santos to do, and like Jeff said earlier, we want him to be a sub. There's nothing better than watching Santos just destroy tired legs at the end of a match.
That would have, though, to Jeff's point, that would have broken Orlando's strategy wide open because you score that fast. Then now Orlando has to have the ball.
Right. And you saw Santos, his biggest attribute, win a playoff game last year. I mean, him coming on late, bombing down that left side, beating everyone led to that goal that advanced them in playoffs. So the strategy is there. You see his value there as a healthy speed off the bench. In terms of what they could have done, I mean, they ran out of ideas. You just lost that. They bunkered so well, and it kind of the only thing that anyone thought to do was like, okay, get it out wide, get it to the byline, get it to the line, and send it to the middle. Maybe it bounces and somebody finds it. Like they just ran that over and over and over again, and that just showed me that like tired legs, tired mentality. They were just gassed. They just ran, and they literally just ran out of steam. And you had your opportunities, and when, as it was brought up earlier, when you get those chances in games like this, you got to be able to finish those. You can't do what Bupenza did and scuff that breakaway. You can't do those little things that it's going to cost you points and going to cost you valuable points. So it's good. It was a good learning opportunity for this team in terms of now you've seen it twice. But like I mentioned, as my worst, like really got to there's got to be a change of game plan at some point, whether it's changing shape, taking more of the ball, hitting long balls, something to open things up because you're going to need it. You're going to need it.
Yeah, I really think that this is the type of game that we missed the likes of Don Badji. I don't know if many people remember the first game in Orlando last season where he shoulder blocked Ruan, got the ball and cut a really sharp cross into the middle for Vasquez to head it in. We needed that type of stronger play on our edges. I think when we were down, we were forced to really play more, finesse, play faster ball. If we had the likes of someone like a Don Badji who was able to muscle in there and get the ball away, and that might have been a factor to changing this instead of, depending on Bupenza, who I think sometimes he and Santos are very much alike in terms of their style of play. So I think having that extra person off the bench would have really helped us out.
I think to that point, like it reminded me of like bringing another sport analogy. It reminded me of trying to break down like a zone defense in basketball. Like the moment you can penetrate, especially with a big guy inside, you can break that zone down and get cuts to a basket. Same thing with Baji, and that's you kind of hope that Brandon Vasquez could have had that hold up play a little bit better. But if you can play that guy into the center and have him lay balls off either out wide or through a streaking run in the middle like Moreno or somebody else running that channel, like that is how you dominate that parked bus. And that's a great call, Jeff. That you're really missing that hold up play that can really give you another idea to break through.
Yeah, when you have Vasquez playing as exhausted, I don't know, he just looked off, and then you have Acosta just shooting balls he's not ready to shoot, like especially at the end of the match there, where he's just, I think he took the last shot on the goal, and it just, when you see a frustrated Acosta just taking random hot shots, then you know it's not good.
To that analysis, I'm very happy, and I know I shouldn't be saying this about the opportunities. I'm very happy Vasquez is not with the U.S. men's national team these 2 weeks. He really needs a break. He needs a breather. He needs to just, I think, reset himself and run his engine these last 2 months of the year.
Good point. I totally forgot about it. We do have two going to international duty. Junior Moreno for Venezuela and Santos, right?
No, Arias.
Arias, thank you.
You did the same thing I did earlier.
Yeah.
They're actually playing against each other, I think, in this break. That should be very exciting to see.
They will, yeah.
So the only two players not getting the much needed rest, and so I wouldn't be surprised if you see them get a little bit of a maybe not a start when they get back, but we'll see. We'll see what Pat Noonan's got up his sleeves for that. Real quick, though, we want to let everybody know you can tweet at us anytime at Cincinnati Soccer Talk. We have live game feeds that constantly scroll as especially for an away game. If you're just sitting at home and you want to chime in, go ahead and do that because we do those live. Email us feedback@cincinnati-soccertalk.com. We love hearing from you all. And real quick, we wanted to give a shout out to everyone that supports us over on Patreon, and you can, of course, do that. We are launching the next game for Philadelphia. Will start our playoffs of the Growler Cup, but anyone can still join. In fact, you just have to overcome the winners of round 1 and 2 because they get a couple extra bonus points for winning those rounds. But round 3 is essentially a new game. And so we look forward to, we're actually going to continue this one into the playoffs, unlike the former years. So it'll be pretty cool. Thanks to Red Lee, John Davidson, Mike Hudson, Laurel Failer, Matthew Adamczyk, Riley Stephen Burke, James Denbrough, Tom Newhouse, Brian Weigel, Brian Gills, Dan Alberts, Will Kychek, Ian Rexroad, Carl Fight, Christina Sharma, Kyle Pohl, Rupesh, Tom Beaverdorf, Jason who's super average, John Haskell, Ryan Ernst, Mary Lou, Wes Anastasi, Rob Pierce, Clifford Adams, Thomas Thepf, Pierce Johnson, Mike Parentis, David Wiederhold, Rob Gassell, Brad Weigel, Kevin Day, Paul Hedger, Alex Carnegus, Dave Tingler, Patrick Lahani, Mike Bowman, Brett Sova, Kevin Cooney, Joe Max, Jack Emery, Sarah Gorman, David Moore, Bob Ryan, Ryan Durkin, Bart Labita, Rob Triple, Joe Lohr, Bill Leopold, Maureen De Moray, Jose, David Myers, John Cafardi, Olympico, Joseph of Hanger at 937, Jackson Fight, Justin Blair, Kyle Phillips, Ashley Newhouse, Dan Burns, Coach Clip, Justin Gregory, Scott Dalton, Jason Ashcraft, Jeffrey Tebbets, Troll, Jackson Fight, Matt Bauer, Pete Koch, and Mark Godsey. Thank you all for supporting Cincinnati Soccer Talk each and every month. We keeps everything running. So thanks, guys. FC Cincinnati, we're finally in the stage we can start talking magic numbers, y'all. We can start talking how we think this season will end and where it's going to go. Lovely. We usually calculate our own numbers, but I noticed over on Reddit, user mclip has already put together an updated presentation. So why not just give him a shout out and double check these numbers here to make sure they're right. But he's got our final Magic total at 15 points. So if you win 5 games or some variant of that, it is guaranteed that FC Cincinnati will take home the Supporters Shield. Now that can change. That number can go down as we get further in the season and other teams drop. As of right now, New England is FC Cincinnati's biggest opponent to the Supporters Shield. And New England, I think Philadelphia is right behind them. And then you've got St. Louis, and then the team that just beat us, Orlando, in 4th. So those are the teams that are kind of in the same ballpark of realistic possibility if FCC was to just go on a really bad streak. And then if those 4 teams really could keep it going, they would probably have the best odds of overtaking it. Seattle's almost gone. Minnesota, Atlanta, Houston, a lot of these teams are about to get knocked out of play. So as we increase our points, those teams will start to get knocked out of the magic number. So, right, I think there's 8 or 9, 10 teams that have a theoretical chance of getting the Supporters Shield, right, Justin?
Yeah, and some really interesting names in there. And I my mind just keeps going back. Forgive me if this is off topic, but every time I see St. Louis up there, it just blows my mind. I mean, we don't talk about it enough. Like they've just kind of like went in and it was just kind of like, okay, well, they're good. They're top of the table, all that stuff. But it's like, holy cow, man, that's an expansion team that's still in the hunt. They're not going to get it, we hope. But yeah, it's I think this is pretty apparent that there are 3. Orlando did close some ground, but it's pretty apparent it's a 3-dog race in the East right now for it. I think it's Philadelphia, New England, and FC Cincinnati that have a chance to take it home. And I think for 15 points, what do we got? 7 matches left. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think that would be a little bit greedy. So let's hope that let's hope that it's. I think we'll find some middle ground there. So I think FC Cincinnati. I still think FC Cincinnati is on their way to a shield, but they do need to take care of business, and they can't get cute in some of these matches.
There are a few games this weekend that we actually have being played, and we're actually playing some MLS soccer. I think there are 5 games. One of them to look at, Minnesota is playing New England. New England has been okay on the road, but Minnesota has been dreadful at home. So I would be surprised to see New England, with the form that they're in lately, get 3 points out of that. The other one is LA Galaxy hosting St. Louis, of all teams. Take a look at St. Louis. The reason they're, I think, so high is that they have 10 home wins. On the road, they're not great. They're just about average, but I think they also tend to play poorer on the road. So if the Galaxy can do us a solid, maybe they can, win and sort of wipe out any idea of a West team challenging us for the Supporters Shield.
78 points are possible still for FC Cincinnati. The Revs set the record for 74. So FC Cincinnati has literally 4-game buffer to tie, 3-game buffer to beat it. Jeff's shaking his head. Josh, will they do it? Yeah. This is a really hard one.
I'm looking at this stretch of run. Obviously, you get Philadelphia, but then you get Montreal, Charlotte, Toronto, and Red Bulls. That's 4 straight games that you should be expecting to get 12 points out of.
Mm-hmm. And go on.
I mean, and then you get Miami, and then you get home in Atlanta on decision day.
Miami's last place. That should be an easy win.
Yeah, but
I don't think it's impossible to believe if you hold this team to a standard that they should be winning the games against the teams that they're way ahead of. They're way ahead of all 4 of those teams. That's 12 points. You've proven that you can hang with Miami. Can you go get another point because that was a draw?
Mm-hmm. It's just
and then you're at home against I think we can do it still. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility or even an outrageous realm of possibility.
I'm not worried about the middle group. I am worried about going to Philadelphia. I am worried about going into Miami. If there's still hope, and last night proved that there's still hope for Inter Miami to get into the playoffs, right? I think at some point we're going to start getting the legs, start getting some stuff like that. But I think also you got to think of what decision day means to Atlanta. They could potentially be playing their way into a home field advantage. It would take some task, but they potentially could crack in there. So I think that would be huge for them, at least to not be in that first play-in game. That's definitely what they're looking for.
I wish I was more confident in your 12 points visions there, Josh. I mean, I'm looking at a Montreal squad that is 9-0-4 at home. Yeah, they hit a buzz saw in Columbus last weekend, but this is a team that's still very good at home. So that I don't see that being an automatic. Toronto at home, they blitzed Philadelphia at home. I think it was 3-1. So that's not a team that we can go in and say, oh, it's a slam dunk. And then Charlotte, they've shown that they can pull their weight if they're forced into a corner. I'm not dismissing them either. I'm not even dismissing Red Bull right now. I know Red Bull last night 4-1 loss at Philadelphia. But you just don't want to go at these teams and say, yeah, we got you in the bag, and then realize, oh no, we're now down 1-0 in the 44th minute and we can't penetrate this defense.
Yeah, I don't think you'll have any problem with Pat Noonan in this locker room going into matches like that. I think some people were saying that about Orlando. Maybe we just kind of overlooked Orlando, or just trying to get beyond them. And I don't think. I think this team is really competitively hungry. They want to close the door. They want to slam the door on the MLS competitions, and they want to bring home a supporter shield. Not only that, but also prove something, turn some heads, put something in the history books. And so they're I don't think that we're just going to roll into Montreal and be surprised by their play, nor Toronto. We're not going to roll into Toronto and pray to get out with a win. I think Cincinnati can play pretty well against Toronto. It's a matchup thing.
If there's anybody that has access to Google, remind me, in 2018, did we set a points record for the USL when we got their supporter shield and then crashed 2 games into the playoffs?
Why even bring that up?
Why talk about playoffs?
We
man?
don't need that right now. We got one goal, Jeff. One goal.
Supporter shield.
Trying to be realistic, guys. Bring ourselves down to earth.
I've been on the record for my opinions about playoffs in all sports. So I'm not even thinking about it.
I think it is a fair thing to remind yourselves of that we all experienced it before. I will trust Pat Noonan to get this team course corrected, and to Boston's point at the very top of the show, bring it all the whole circle all the way back around, playing their best soccer at the right time. Finding their rhythm again is going to be critical. And yes, if that means you're missing out on the record because you're dropping points against Philadelphia and maybe you squeak out a draw or stumble against Montreal. But I think those home matches down the stretch, you got 3 of them left. You've got a tough game against Miami. Like, those are linchpin games that are going to define your season, because I think Pat Noonan is going to hopefully get them ready to go and playing. If you go into the playoffs on 3 straight victories, this is the most dangerous team in MLS. I think that's the goal. I think obviously at that point you're probably gonna get supporter shield anyway, but I think you're trying to make it the most cohesive unit at the perfect time.
Well, I fully expect us to win at Miami and drop to Toronto, because after this week, everything's in reverse and weird.
Yeah.
Let's hit the highlights of the rest of the week, because we're running out of time. But real quick, I just wanted to give our boy Roman Celentano a shout out for a long-term contract extension. I think probably well-deserved, coming off of a generational deal. A lot of us thought he had another year on that deal, but MLS has changed the rules, and it's only 2 years. instead of 3. So that surprised a couple of us that haven't kept up to date with our MLS rulebook. But that is why they went ahead and made that deal. If you are wondering about the Generation Adidas, only a 2-year deal there. Celentano, FC Cincinnati, Pat Noonan, I guess just excited to keep him around. And do you guys see anything wrong with this year? You fine with Celentano for the next couple of years?
Most definitely.
I think it's still going to be a team-friendly contract too.
Considering what this team went through since they joined MLS at the goalkeeper position, I think this is probably the best news that you could have hoped for, at least one of the big check marks.
Yeah.
Bring back Rivera.
I look forward to the player salaries coming out next year, so we can all finally figure out what it took to sign him. But we'll get there eventually. Acosta, team of the month for the second time, and maybe as big of a deal as that is, maybe the bigger deal being Pat Noonan getting his first ever coach of the week after so many snubs by the league. Do you think it was all the FC Cincinnati fans tweeting at the league going, if you don't pick this one after Atlanta, what are you doing with?
I think it was who was it, Brian, that asked Kendra last episode about it?
It took Kendra.
Kendra put in a good word for us. That's what it was. Finally got like, hey, did you guys notice that the best coach or top 3 at least hasn't even won it once this entire time? Like, good lord.
I was hoping she'd bring it up on the broadcast.
Crazy.
I'm kind of surprised they didn't pick Ben Olsen from Houston as the manager of the week, because he's really turned them around and put them in position to have a home field advantage, maybe in the playoffs.
Don't do this to us, Jeff. No.
I've got to be the bad guy.
No, you don't get to be the bad guy.
We've got no Weigel this week. I've got to be the bad guy.
Go back and look at some of the people that won it over Pat, especially like after we beat Seattle at home, those kind of matches. Philadelphia,
Yeah. Biggest news, we already touched on it. Lucho will miss the next match versus Philadelphia. FC Cincinnati without Lucho Acosta. What do you do? How do you beat Philadelphia without Lucho Acosta? Because in my mind, I've already just been like, just if we tie. Tie's the best we can do. Draw, sorry. Soccer fan.
That's a good question that they have not answered in 3 years.
We don't have any answers. They don't. So
I'm trying to find the last time that he wasn't in our squad during an MLS game.
We put
Columbus?
Barrial up top.
Last year?
We put Brett Halsey on the left.
I mean, he was out most of that game against Chicago, and then
the road.
Then he comes in and just runs the field to make it 3-3.
Yeah,
but,
we were down 3-1 in Chicago on a really cold night.
Oh yeah, I remember that game.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wild one.
So yeah, but we also had like Brenner there, so there was some sense of.
Someone is saying he missed the St. Louis match.
Oh, that was a lovely game.
That makes sense.
I feel so much more confident now that after the game that we lost, St. Louis is the one we
don't give up 5, and you probably have a better chance.
Yeah, no tornadoes, none of that.
All right, well, we'll talk about it a little bit more next week because that's going to be the big conversation next week. Just a heads up if you're looking forward to the next show, because we have to. And Pat Noonan, Pat Noonan will be the coach of the month, maybe the year, if he figures out a way for FC Cincinnati to win games without Lucho Acosta, win games against top tier teams. If they can do that, they can win any game ever. So that's the big key there. The last bit of news is not player or team related. The city of Cincinnati, Jeff Stein said last week that the Central Park Way reimagined project is on an expedited schedule because FC Cincinnati would like to bring the 2026 MLS All-Star Game to the city. So he probably didn't know he was dropping soccer news at the city hall when he said it, but it kind of got some eyebrows raised over here because we've been wondering when our All-Star Game would be, and I don't know why they're waiting for the street to be redesigned to do so. But Central Parkway is likely going to have be narrowed and have a little bit more pedestrian and bike access. And I think I remember the drawings had a bunch of trees, and basically they're just going to make that whole area in between TQL Stadium and Music Hall look real pretty. They're going to fancy it up. And of course,
I like how the trees are the thing that's going to push us over the edge to get an all-star game.
No,
but I mean,
Columbus jumped us, and it is got to be because we told them to wait.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really anxious to see an all-star game come here. I mean, if you can get a big-time EPL squad to come here and show off their talents with our best talents in MLS, and do it in the year that we're going to be having the World Cup come to the country, I think that's a big-time opportunity to show not only the country but the rest of the world, hey, this is what you guys gave up when you passed over us for the World Cup. So I think this will be a great opportunity for us.
I mean, 1 second. Are we sure it's an EPL team? Or
It'll
they
be
just changed
no. It could
No.
be Liga MX. It could be whatever Major League Soccer wants.
It could be
to
East
but-
versus West at that point. Who knows?
I'm saying if we opened it up to Arsenal this year,
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
No.
I'd love to see what we can open up to for the world in a few more years.
it's going to be Barcelona.
It
When was
will
the last time they
likely
played
be
Dortmund?
Some big team. It will be some big team.
I will laugh if it's Crystal Palace again.
I
I will laugh.
I don't
Way
think
to
Crystal
follow it
Palace
up.
is big enough for the All-Star game. To be honest with you,
Hey!
I'm just saying.
Don't do it to him, man.
Well, we have an international break coming up following Saturday. So you tune in and you can watch our other. You can watch Arias or you can watch our call-ups and check out a little bit. Oh, Team USA is playing, Jeff. Is that why you're wearing the USA jersey?
Yeah, they've got, I believe, a game against Uzbekistan at St. Louis, and then a friendly against Oman. Not sure where that one's located, but that should be the next 2 games for the U.S. men.
This is the first competition with Berhalter back, right?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Some
Sure
cupcakes before you get the ball rolling, right? Uzbekistan and Oman.
Can't wait for those GGG tactics again.
And no Gio Reyna. That's too bad.
Yeah,
I don't
What
wonder
have they
why.
called yet?
Wonder why. That's kind of weird, huh? Let's get into your final thoughts and head out of here. We'll start with you, Justin.
My final thoughts are, I think that I'm actually going to enjoy a little bit of time taking into. I probably won't be watching much of the U.S. matches. A little bit overloaded with sports right now, and I'm just going to go out and enjoy the fresh air until we go take the big W in Philadelphia.
All right. Spin it over to you, Jeff.
I believe, I'm glad to get this break and sort of have a muted international break. I believe that the next big game at home is actually going to be the U.S. women's team playing a friendly against South Africa at TQL Stadium, September 21st. It's a team that's going to be in flux. There's a few retirements that have been announced. I believe the head coach is gone, so there'll be definitely a different sort of women's team after the World Cup crash that they had. But if you're available and able to go there, I don't know what the roster is just yet, but it'd be a nice evening to go see it.
I'm going to start some research. My final thoughts on trees and what trees I want to be on Central Parkway. I'm going to start petitioning City Hall, and maybe I can get my favorite types of trees on the street, and we will have a beautiful 2026 All-Star game. So thanks for listening to everybody. We appreciate you coming out and live or watching on the show tomorrow. Appreciate it. See you next week.